Okay, so we should talk in terms of means for particular people or particular kinds of people, and not ideals and then making exceptions for particular kinds of people. I get that, and I understand the motivation for it. But I think a lot of people are going to hear this and maybe virtue theory as applied in contexts like this generally as kind of relativistic. I mean, isn't this just relativism relative to you or your circumstances? Here's the right thing to do, here's the mean, but for somebody else, relative to them, something quite different could be the right thing to do.
Right. Well, if you mean relativism in the sense that you just described it,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Okay.
But if what you mean is relativism in the sense that, oh, it's all relative, if I eat meat, if I don't eat meat, oh, it's my situation.
Right.
That, I don't think the view is going to fall prey to that.
Okay.
For one thing, and I think this is really important for virtue ethics, you're talking about a mean between two extremes, right? So one of the guiding assumptions is that it's always going to be possible to go too far one way or the other. So just unthinkingly consuming whatever kinds of animal products you want to, well, that's just going to be doing injustice to others. Anybody who's spent time looking at factory farming or thinking about these issues is going to recognize that, right? On the other hand, doing injustice to yourself and, can take all kinds of different forms. And the fact that people might have different means between those two extremes doesn't mean that you're talking about this wildly relativistic system, right? One of the things that you're going to need to do is figure out what your mean is.
Right.
And part of how you're going to have to do that is by introspecting, right? You're going to have to think about who you are. You're going to have to think about what kind of resources are open to you. You're going to want to talk about it with other people too. So you're going to want to get their take on where you are and, right? And certain people, this goes back to Aristotle's idea about the prudent person, right? Certain people are going to be pretty good at identifying these kinds of things, right? In the same way that there are certain people you call for relationship advice because they're going to tell you what you need to hear, even if you don't want to hear it. Same kind of thing goes for this, right? So you've got people around you whose opinions you trust on these kinds of issues, and in addition to just kind of thinking in isolation about what you should eat and how you should eat it, you need to kind of like do this check.
Good. Yeah. So there, in a sense, there is an objectivity here. There's something that is objectively the right kind of thing for you to do given your situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas a certain form of relativism that you want to resist will say, well, there's no real objective right or wrong at all. It's just relative to cultural patterns and norms and so forth. And so we should stop thinking in terms of standards of justice by which we then evaluate individual people's circumstances or something like that.
Right, right. And so I'd want to push away from the second and more towards the first.
Right.
And although even then, right, and this might get too squishy for you, but even when you're talking about an objective right thing for you to do, virtue ethics isn't going to be all about, banging yourself over the head if you fail to figure it out. It's supposed to be seen as this moral process. So what you're trying to do is develop into the kind of person, right, who makes these sorts of choices and makes them well and, acts appropriately. But you're not supposed to be taking each of your individual actions and evaluating them for rightness or wrongness and then kind of keeping a little, merit-demerit system.
Right.
You're supposed to learn from your mistakes, but you're supposed to be putting it into this larger context of character development.
So focus more on the kind of person you're becoming than the individual acts that you're doing all the way along.
Right. The individual acts that you're doing all the way along are important insofar as they contribute to your being a certain kind of person who plays a certain sort of role in your social group.